The silent infiltration. Commander Eliza Chen stared at the surveillance footage for the fifth time. Secretary of Defense Marshall had just authorized the shutdown of 3 key early warning systems, a decision that made absolutely no strategic sense. She rubbed her tired eyes, the fluorescent lights of the Pentagon's secure analysis room buzzing overhead. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the past 6 months, she had documented 47 cases of high-ranking officials making decisions that seemed to deliberately weaken Earth's defense capabilities. Still at it, Commander. Dr. Marcus Reed entered the room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The neurophysicist had been working with military intelligence since strange brain activity patterns began appearing in personnel 3 years ago. Something's happening, Marcus. These people, they're not compromised in any way we understand. Eliza accepted the coffee gratefully. No blackmail material, no financial irregularities, no ideological shifts. They just change. Marcus set his tablet on the desk. I've completed the analysis on the brain scans. Look at this. The screen displayed a comparison between normal neural activity and the patterns found in affected officials. See these filament-like structures? They're not physical. They're more like shadows in the brain's electromagnetic field. What are we dealing with? Eliza asked. Not what. Who? The voice came from the doorway. The thin man with piercing eyes stood there, his security badge identifying him as Dr. Nolan Keller, Theoretical Physics Division. And they're not from around here. 3 days later, Eliza found herself in an abandoned no-order facility deep inside Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado. The room contained an unlikely assembly. Marcus, Dr. Keller, Captain Jaden Torres, an ex-Special Forces operative who'd been discharged after reporting transparent figures moving through his base in Afghanistan, and Lucia Reyes, a civilian artist who'd been painting bizarre, geometric entities for years before being institutionalized. They're called shades, Dr. Keller explained, activating a specialized imaging device. The air in the center of the room seemed to waver, revealing a translucent, shifting form that made Eliza's eyes hurt to look at directly. They exist partially outside our dimension, but can attach to human consciousness. They've been among us for decades, maybe centuries, patiently infiltrating positions of influence. Why can't everyone see them? Jaden asked, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm he was no longer authorized to carry. Lucia spoke up, her voice soft but steady. Some of us always could. But who believes the crazy artist who paints monsters no one else can see? The shades avoid certain people, Marcus added. Our research shows they can't effectively bond with hosts who exhibit highly individualistic thought patterns, creative thinkers, people with certain neurological differences, those with exceptional emotional depth. That's why they've been targeting the military and government first, Eliza realized. Standardized thinking, chain of command, protocol adherence. Perfect hosts, Keller finished, and they're accelerating their timeline. Eliza studied the detection equipment. How many are there? Keller's expression was grim. We've confirmed shade influence in approximately 30% of top military leadership, 40% of global government officials, and nearly 60% of major media executives. But these are just the ones in positions of power. What do they want? Eliza asked. Territorial expansion, Lucia said with certainty. All predators want the same thing. The team spent the next 2 weeks developing technology that could detect shade presence without specialized equipment. Lucia's artistic insight proved invaluable. Her ability to perceive the shades naturally helped them calibrate their devices. They created portable detectors disguised as ordinary smartphones and began quietly identifying uncompromised individuals they could trust. Their first direct confrontation came when they attempted to extract Admiral Harrison from the Naval Command Center. The moment they activated their countermeasure device, designed to disrupt the Shade's connection, the Admiral's face contorted in a way that was barely human. You perceive us, the Admiral said, his voice overlaid with a strange harmonic quality. Unexpected. Unfortunate. What followed was chaos. Harrison displayed impossible strength, tossing Jaden across the room before Eliza could deploy the enhanced countermeasure. The shade eventually detached from the Admiral, its semi-visible form dissipating through the walls, but not before they recorded crucial data about its structure. "They're a collective," Marcus explained after analyzing the readings. "Each shade is connected to a central consciousness, and they're vulnerable to certain brainwave patterns, particularly those associated with creative thinking, intense emotion, and abstract reasoning. That's why artists and different thinkers can see them," Lucia added. "Our minds naturally generate patterns that disrupt their perception shielding, and why they've been systematically discrediting and isolating people who can perceive them," Jaden noted. "Anyone who claimed to see them was diagnosed with mental illness or branded a conspiracy theorist." Their breakthrough came when Dr. Keller developed a method to track quantum disturbances associated with shade communication. The pattern revealed something alarming. "There's a convergence happening," he announced, showing them the global activity map. Shade activity is intensifying around critical infrastructure, nuclear facilities, defense systems, communication networks. They're positioning for something big. "We need to warn people," Eliza insisted. "With what evidence?" Marcus asked. "We'll be discredited immediately. Most major media outlets are already compromised." Lucia, who had been quietly sketching, suddenly looked up. "I think I know how we can fight them." She turned her sketchpad around. The drawing showed a complex pattern that somehow amplified human emotional states just by looking at it. "The shades avoid creatives because our minds hurt them. What if we could turn that into a weapon?" Dr. Keller studied the pattern. "Fascinating. A visual representation of brainwave patterns toxic to shade physiology. Art as a weapon," Jaden said with a hint of a smile. "Now that's thinking outside the box." As they developed Lucia's concept, they discovered that various creative expressions, music with certain harmonic structures, poetry that evoked strong emotional responses, even mathematical equations that required intuitive leaps, all generated neural patterns that disrupted shade influence. "It's everything that makes us uniquely human," Marcus realized. "Our creativity, our emotional depth, our ability to think in ways that aren't purely logical. These are our natural defenses." Their monitoring systems suddenly lit up with alerts. Shade activity worldwide had spiked dramatically. Reports flooded in of simultaneous system failures across critical infrastructure. Nuclear launch facilities reported unauthorized access attempts. Defense networks worldwide began to shut down in coordinated sequence. "They know we can see them," Eliza said, watching the chaos unfold on their monitors. "And they're done hiding." The team watched in horror as their long-range sensors detected something massive entering Earth's atmosphere. Not a physical ship, but a colossal quantum disturbance that their instruments registered as a concentration of shade consciousness, so dense it distorted reality around it. "The convergence isn't just the shades on Earth coordinating," Keller said, his voice barely audible over the alarms. "It's reinforcements." Eliza looked at her small team, a soldier, a physicist, a neurologist, and an artist, perhaps the only people fully aware of what humanity was about to face. "Then we need to move fast," she said. "Humanity doesn't even know it's at war yet." Humanity unleashed. The next 72 hours brought civilization to the brink of collapse. Shade-influenced leaders initiated conflicts between nations with historically peaceful relations. Nuclear facilities worldwide reported system malfunctions that barely avoided catastrophic meltdowns. Global communication networks broadcast subtle frequencies that induced paranoia and aggression in the general population. "They're pushing us towards self-destruction," Marcus said, watching news feeds of growing civil unrest in major cities. The team had established a network of safe houses across the country, connecting with others naturally resistant to shade influence. Artists, musicians, writers, philosophers, and neurodivergent individuals formed the core of their growing resistance. Dr. Sato, A quantum physicist who'd been dismissed from her university position after publishing theories about consciousness existing beyond physical dimensions, had joined their efforts and made a critical discovery. The shades aren't just avoiding creative minds, she explained during an emergency briefing. They're actively harmed by them. The neural patterns generated during creative expression or emotional depth are like acid to their quasi-physical structure. So our plan to broadcast Lucia's disruptive patterns could work? Eliza asked. Better than we thought, Seto replied. I've analyzed the quantum signature of the shade convergence. They operate as a hive mind. Each individual shade is connected to the central consciousness. If we could introduce a cascading disruption into their network, Jaden leaned forward. We could take them all down at once. The team called it the Bright Protocol, a multi-layered assault on shade consciousness using humanity's most unique traits. Lucia worked with other artists to create visual patterns that disrupted shade perception. Musicians composed harmonic sequences that interfered with their communication. Poets and writers crafted language designed to evoke emotional responses so intense they generated neural patterns toxic to shade physiology. We need to broadcast this worldwide, Eliza said. Every screen, every speaker, every possible channel. The Global Broadcast Center in Geneva, Marcus suggested. It has the infrastructure to reach nearly every connected device on the planet simultaneously. It will also be heavily defended, Jaden warned. And not just by humans. Intelligence gathered by their growing network confirmed his concerns. The center had become a fortress of shade activity, guarded by fully possessed humans displaying capabilities far beyond normal parameters. We need a distraction, Eliza decided. Something to divide their attention. The plan they developed was audacious. While the main team infiltrated the broadcast center, resistance cells worldwide would simultaneously stage creative attacks at key locations, impromptu concerts near military bases, art installations around government buildings, poetry readings at media centers. Each event would generate disruptive patterns that would temporarily weaken shade control in the area. The night before the operation, Eliza found Lucia sitting alone, staring at her final design, the central component of the Bright Protocol. Will it work? Eliza asked. Lucia looked up. It has to. I've put everything into this, not just technique, but emotion, memory, hope. She gestured to the complex pattern. This represents everything beautiful about being human, our capacity for joy, for wonder, for love even in the darkest times. If anything can hurt them, it's this. The infiltration of the broadcast center began at dawn. As resistance cells worldwide launched their creative distractions, Eliza's team, enhanced with Sato's experimental tech that masked their brainwave signatures, moved through the building's service tunnels. They encountered the first possessed guard near the broadcast control room. The man moved with unnatural fluidity, his eyes reflecting shade consciousness. Jaden deployed one of Lucia's smaller disruptive patterns, projecting it directly into the guard's field of vision. The effect was immediate. The guard convulsed as the shade attempted to detach, giving them the opening they needed. The broadcast suite was defended by 3 fully possessed technicians. The fight was brief but brutal. Jaden was injured, and Marcus barely avoided being thrown from the 10th floor window before they secured the room. We have 14 minutes before their security protocols lock us out, Keller warned, his fingers flying across the control panels. As they prepared the broadcast, alerts flooded their communication channels. The massive shade entity they had detected entering Earth's atmosphere was descending directly toward their location. They know what we're doing, Seto said. Good, Eliza responded. Let them come. As Keller initiated the global broadcast sequence, the building began to shake. The massive shade entity, now visible even to normal perception as a reality-distorting void in the sky above Geneva, was attempting to physically destroy the broadcast center. 3 minutes to full transmission, Keller announced as ceiling panels crashed around them. Lucia stood before the camera, her final pattern displayed behind her. When the broadcast begins, I need to channel the emotional response directly. It will amplify the effect. That kind of neural feedback could be dangerous, Marcus warned. Lucia's smile was serene. Art isn't safe, Doctor. Never has been. The broadcast began, Lucia's voice guiding humanity through the experience as her pattern appeared on screens worldwide. She spoke of human resilience, of our capacity for creativity in our darkest hours, of the strength found in our diversity of thought and expression. As she spoke, she poured her consciousness into the pattern, experiencing every emotion it was designed to evoke. The effect surpassed their wildest expectations. Across the globe, humans experiencing the broadcast felt a surge of connection, not just to each other, but to something deeper within themselves. The neural response generated a cascading wave of patterns lethal to shade physiology. Possessed individuals collapsed as shades violently detached, dissipating into nothingness. The massive convergence entity above Geneva convulsed, its structure destabilizing as the wave of human consciousness washed through it. In the broadcast center, Lucia collapsed. The neural feedback had been too intense. As Marcus rushed to her side, her eyes fluttered open. "Did it work?" she whispered. The answer came as they watched the massive shade entity above Geneva shatter like glass, fragments of its consciousness dissolving into the atmosphere. Across their networks, reports flooded in of shades detaching and disintegrating worldwide. The hive mind had collapsed. Recovery would not be simple. The shades had inflicted significant damage to global infrastructure, and the psychological trauma of possession would require healing. But humanity had not only survived, it had discovered its greatest strength. 3 months later, Eliza stood in the newly established Shade Research Facility, watching as Sato and her team examined the few shade fragments they had managed to preserve for study. "The quantum signature analysis is fascinating," Sato explained. "The shades aren't just from another dimension. They're from countless dimensions. They've been consuming worlds across the multiverse for millennia. And we're the first to stop them," Marcus added. "Because we're the only species they've encountered with such diverse thought patterns," Lucia said. She had recovered, though the experience had left her changed. Her perceptual abilities enhanced in ways they were still understanding. Most evolved with more uniform consciousness. We're chaotic in comparison. "Chaos has its advantages," Jaden remarked. Dr. Keller joined them, excitement evident on his normally serious face. "We've made a breakthrough with the shade technology. Their dimensional phasing abilities. We think we can replicate them. This could revolutionize everything from transportation to energy production. And exploration," Eliza added. "If we can navigate dimensions, we can find the worlds they came from." Lucia finished. "Maybe even find allies." As they stood discussing humanity's new place in a much larger multiverse, Eliza reflected on the irony. The shades had infiltrated humanity to conquer it, but in doing so, they had inadvertently revealed humanity's greatest strength, our boundless creativity, our emotional depth, our beautiful, chaotic individuality. The silent war was over. Humanity's voice had been heard across dimensions, and it was just the beginning.